This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thank you so much for joining us. I'm Ephraim Graham. We begin with a new wildfire in Southern California. It's burning near the Ventura County city of Santa Paula. CBN's Caitlin Burke reports the Camp Fire in Northern California is now the state's deadliest in the last 100 years, with a sobering death toll of 56 and another 130 people still missing.
It's the deadliest fire in the modern era, and it's not done yet. The Camp Fire raging in Northern California is only 35% contained, and the search for its victims is so vast that the number of crews increases by the day.
It's too soon. 56 years old. She had a lot more to give.
The Butte County town of Paradise, California seems to be the ground zero of this fire. Nearly 9,000 homes there destroyed, and a majority of the fire's victims and missing reportedly called Paradise home.
There are potentially over 100 people that were killed in Butte, potentially.
Yeah, this is so devastating that I don't really have the words to describe it. It looks like a war zone. It is. It's the devastation that only fires of this kind could bring about. Nobody's really expecting it, but it happens.
CBN's Operation Blessing is in California, connecting with churches there and determining what needs can be met. They plan to get disaster relief supplies into the area as soon as possible. Meanwhile, a grim warning from authorities. The death toll from the Camp Fire has the potential to double. They tell residents that they won't be allowed back into their neighborhoods until the search for the missing is over. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Many Democrats say when they take control of the House, they won't waste any time launching investigations into President Donald Trump and his administration. CBN's Jenna Browder has more on this story now from Washington.
We are not scattershot. We are not doing any investigation for a political purpose, but to seek the truth. So I think a word that you could describe about how Democrats will go forward in this regard is we will be very strategic.
House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, who hopes to take over as Speaker, says her party will be strategic, but some new signs suggest that may not be the case. Axios reports Democrats are loading a subpoena cannon with a list of at least 85 investigations they want to pursue.
Well, I think the Democrats are very much at risk of overplaying their hand here. I think the American people are going to suffer from investigation fatigue.
Stephen Moore, an economist with the Heritage Foundation and former Trump economic advisor, tells CBN News he's actually glad Democrats will have control of the House.
I was kind of quietly hoping that Democrats would take the House and the Republicans would keep the Senate, because I felt like if Republicans controlled every lever of power going into the 2020 election and anything goes wrong, then what party would you possibly have to blame but the Republicans? Now, if things go wrong, Trump could say, look, it's because the Pelosi Democrats are blocking what I'm trying to do.
The Axios list covers just about everyone and everything close to Trump from day one of his presidency. Many Democrats are talking about impeachment, as the incoming House Oversight Chairman, Representative Jerry Nadler, would be in charge of that. But he says his number one priority is Robert Mueller's Russia investigation.
Right now, our top priority is to protect the Mueller investigation, to protect the integrity of that investigation from the White House attempt to stifle it and to interfere with it.
The man in charge of the investigation, Acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker, will be among the first called to testify.
We will make sure that Matt Whitaker immediately, one of our first orders of business will be to invite him and, if necessary, to subpoena him to appear before the committee.
It does violence to the Constitution and the vision of our founders to appoint such a person in such a manner to be the chief legal officer in our country.
A federal judge is sharply criticizing Florida legislators and election officials in Palm Beach County for the state's chronic recount issues. Judge Walker gave voters whose mail-in provisional ballots in Palm Beach County were rejected because of signature issues 2 days to resolve the problem and have their votes counted. During the hearing, the district judge, Mark Walker, said Florida has a history of razor-thin elections, yet Palm Beach County delayed purchasing enough voting machines to handle a recount. He says Florida is the laughingstock of the world, but chose not to fix its election issues. A big victory for a California professor fired for his conservative worldview. Pacific Justice Institute attorneys representing Professor Eric Thompson say an arbiter ruled in his favor in a legal battle with Moreno Valley College. He was fired for challenging students on liberal views towards marriage, gender roles, and sexual orientation. The college said his actions were immoral, and students said they considered challenging their views harassment. The U.S. Treasury Department places economic sanctions against 17 Saudis accused of taking part in the October murder of writer Jamal Khashoggi. The new sanctions freeze any assets they may have in the U.S. It also prohibits any Americans from doing business with them. One of the men is a top aide to Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Khashoggi was killed inside the Saudi Arabia consulate in Turkey. President Trump says he will support bipartisan legislation aimed at giving prison inmates a second chance. Washington reporter Amber Strong introduces us to the diverse group of allies behind this bill and the race against time to get it through Congress.
The movement toward criminal justice reform received a welcome and necessary boost on Wednesday.
Today, I'm thrilled to announce my support for this bipartisan bill that will make our community safer and give former inmates a second chance at life after they have served their time.
The clock is ticking on Congress's chance to make real changes to the criminal justice system. And while things couldn't be more divided here on Capitol Hill, advocates say the time to act is now. They include Kelly Paul, wife of Senator Rand Paul.
I came to this issue a little bit through my work in Kentucky, visiting various halfway houses, recovery centers like the Hope House and the Isaiah House, and realizing how pervasive our drug problem is and how we need alternatives to incarcerating people.
Paul also saw how prison life specifically affected female inmates.
People are not aware of some of the things that were going on in our prisons. First and foremost, women who were giving birth were being shackled.
For Paul, fixing the problem reaches directly to the heart of justice, right and wrong.
If you look at the numbers, that whites and blacks use drugs at the same levels, but if you look at the rates of incarceration, people of color are incarcerated at much higher rates. I'm a conservative, but I always say, big government really hurts people from all walks of life. I think a lot of times when progressives hear conservatives talk about big government, they think we're just concerned about taxes or overregulation or business or economics. But really, this is a civil rights issue.
So Mrs. Paul is doing something she says her friends aren't used to seeing, bringing her desire to right those wrongs straight to Washington. And she's not alone. The push for criminal justice reform extends far beyond the halls of Congress. Everyone from Christian advocacy groups to celebrities to the president's son-in-law, all working together for change.
Jared Kushner has been the pivotal player in this. He personally comes to this issue. His own father was incarcerated, and he has been the driving force inside of the White House in making sure that this gets done.
Former prisoners have also been instrumental in this fight, along with those who preach about second chances. 2,000 pastors signed a letter in support of Congress's latest effort. The bill, dubbed the First Step Act, calls for more opportunities to receive good time credit, better conditions for women, and incarcerating prisoners closer to families. It's been a tough decision for a president who campaigned on law and order, but support from the National Fraternal Order of Police seemed to help balance the scales.
The bill includes reasonable sentencing reforms while keeping dangerous and violent criminals off our streets.
The ball is now in the Senate's court, where advocates hope this lame duck session can lead to a second chance for prisoners and families across the nation. Amber Strong, CBN News, Washington.
Coming up, Monica Lewinsky tells why she is taking part in a documentary on former President Bill Clinton's affairs. But the media's spin on the story takes a different turn. We'll explain in just a moment. And welcome back to CBN NewsWatch. Monica Lewinsky is writing about her decision to participate in the A&E docuseries The Clinton Affair and how she believes the media has given former President Bill Clinton a pass on his conduct with women over the years. She wrote in Vanity Fair, an important part of moving forward is excavating, often painfully, what has gone before. Now, despite her honesty and heartfelt words, the biggest spin in the media overall has been a focus on her saying if she saw Hillary Clinton today, she'd want to say she's sorry. Here now to discuss Lewinsky's article and the Clinton press pass is Rich Noyes with the Media Research Center. So, Rich, Beckett Adams wrote in the Washington Examiner, Lewinsky waited nearly 20 years for reporters to ask the former president tough questions about his history of sexually exploiting women. Would you agree?
I would agree. I mean, this is a story that it was disgracefully covered at the very beginning. You had Republicans before Bill Clinton, people like Bob Packwood, people like Clarence Thomas, where the media were zealous in trying to prosecute them for alleged sexual misconduct. Then Bill Clinton comes along, and the media and feminists in the Democratic Party suddenly decide that it's a personal matter, and they want to bury it. He's a victim of a vast right-wing conspiracy, and that's the spin that has taken hold for 20 years. That's the Clintons are victims in all of this, as opposed to wrongdoers. And I think, Monica Lewinsky coming forward now is helping to put a spotlight on this. We supposedly have this Me Too movement. We have all kinds of changes in our society. And yet this protection of the Clintons is only now ending. And I think in large part, it's not because the media are having any kind of great awakening, but it's because a lot of their biggest enablers in the media have retired or moved on. And also the Clintons are now finally, with Hillary Clinton's defeat in 2016, out of power. They really are yesterday's news. And I think the Democratic Party is trying to shake them off, and the media are trying to shake them off after all that they've done for the last 20 years.
Why does Clinton get a pass on this topic when many others with similar reputations and accusations have not?
Well, he was the centerpiece of Democratic power at the time he was accused. The Democrats had lost the House, they'd lost the Senate. He was the only game in town. Building Clinton up, building up his legacy, building him up going into the 2000 election, that was a way for liberals to hold on to power. If they'd torn him down, they didn't know what was going to happen. So preserving him and preserving his reputation was more important than doing the right thing.
In reporting on Lewinsky's Vanity Fair essay, several media outlets focused on Lewinsky saying she'd like to apologize to Hillary Clinton, let her know she's sorry, even though Clinton in the past called her narcissistic and a Looney Tune. Why the focus on this particular element?
I don't know. I think it goes along with the Clinton as victims of all this. But, Monica Lewinsky was treated shabbily by the Clintons. Other women, Juanita Broaddrick, Paula Jones, Kathleen Willey, they've all been mistreated by the Clintons and mistreated by the media as a way to help protect the Clintons. They should be the ones on the receiving end of apologies, not giving apologies.
Of course, if someone, no matter their party affiliation or celebrity status, is guilty of sexual abuse or exploitation, they should naturally be held accountable. But there is clearly a double standard among some in the media, what they call an elite. Can that ever change?
Well, hopefully it will change. We've had sort of a shaking off of a lot of these sort of old scandals over the last few years. You had people in the media themselves who were sort of helping to sort of prop up the Clintons, people like Matt Lauer at NBC and Charlie Rose at CBS. They've been caught up in their own scandals and had to sort of step down. So I think given all that we know now, it's certainly long past due that we have fair and equal standards between the two parties. We'll have to wait and see. That the test is when the next Democrat comes along who the media don't want to find guilty, but who really is guilty, and they need to hold him accountable.
Have you been surprised by the media's reaction to Monica Lewinsky's decision to come forward after 20 years to share her story?
Not really. I mean, this, so much of it is when the media cover these old stories is they echo the spin they had at the time. They just repeat the old talking points. They don't get introspective. But this is a story where the media really should take a deep look at what they did 20 years ago, whether or not they did the right thing, how it all matches up with how they covered the Kavanaugh hearings and other cases in modern times. The Clinton story is one where they really fell down on the job. And I think, objective people looking back would see that.
Is it something that's too late to correct?
Well, it's not too late to correct the historical record, and it's not too late to do it right the next time they're faced with a similar challenge.
All right. Rich Noyes with the Media Research Center, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate your insight.
Thanks so much.
And stay with us. Much more of CBN NewsWatch coming up, and it's coming up right after this. Presidents, vice presidents, first ladies, and others serving in their nation in political office often write about their times in Washington. Charlotte Pence, the daughter of Vice President Mike Pence, wrote a memoir of a different kind. Wendy Griffiths sat down with her to talk about that.
I love this cover. I couldn't stop looking at the cover because I'm a daddy's girl, too. And here you are about, what, 4, 5?
Yeah, I think I'm about 5 there.
Okay, and you got to tell me this story. I love this just blesses my heart. Where were you guys?
Yeah, so that was taken on Sanibel Island in Florida. And so that was kind of a really kind of a special place for our family and a vacation spot we've gone back to over the years. And so when the publisher asked me for a picture of my dad and me, I couldn't really think of one. And then it just occurred to me one day I had the perfect picture.
Yeah, so are you a daddy's girl?
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
So where you go, this is a reference to the book of Ruth, to a scripture in the book of Ruth, one of my favorite all-time books in the Bible. Why this reference?
Yeah. So it comes from Ruth 1:16, which, as you know, is when Ruth's mother-in-law Naomi is telling her to leave her after her husband has died, and Ruth basically says, "No, where you go, I will go." And so I think that, when I was thinking of a title for this book, that just kind of summed up our family and how we do things. And
because you had to move so much.
We had to move so much, and physically, and I think just also, emotionally and mentally, just going with you wherever you are in your journey is something that we really try to do.
Your dad said something to you once that you said that was really profound, something about everything's changing, or...
Yeah, that was the night that he was elected to governor, actually. And he said to me when he was going up to bed, everything has changed and nothing has changed. And what he meant by that was that, everything has changed in our life that we can kind of see. And, but, our relationships haven't changed and our faith hasn't changed. And, we're still going to be this strong unit.
Your dad is known for his faith, for being that solid rock that, when he gets up to speak, is he always that calm? He's like this sea of tranquility. Is he always like that?
He is. And, he's just somebody that I can always go to for advice, and I know my siblings can too. And even if we want to discuss something with him that we might not agree about, he always accepts it with just such grace and kindness and really wants to hear our perspectives.
Well, the subtitle is Life Lessons from My Father. So you got to give us what are some of the most amazing life lessons that your dad has given you?
Yeah, one of the lessons I think that's kind of one of my favorite is he tells me to speak my dreams. It's a phrase that he says a lot. And he said it on the campaign trail a little bit, when people would come up to him and say that they were interested in maybe going into politics, but they were a little bit timid about it at first. He would always say, no, speak your dreams. That's the first step.
The power of life and death is in the tongue.
Exactly.
You will have the fruit of your lips. So he's basically referencing the Bible.
Yes, he does that a lot.
So maybe you don't want to do it in a crowd, maybe But I do that too. You have to. The Bible says there's power in that.
And we'll be right back with more Wendy Griffiths' interview with Charlotte Pence. We've got that for you coming up right after this. And welcome back. I want to return now to CBN News' Wendy Griffiths' interview with Charlotte Pence about her new book, Where You Go, Life Lessons from My Father.
Right.
And what I loved about your book is you talked about, you always had the gift of writing. Your dad would always say, you're a writer. He would just speak that over you.
Yes.
You pursued that in college. You had a double major, or it was creative writing and
screenwriting.
Yeah, which would scare most parents. They'd be like, "How is she going to put food on the? How's she going to feed herself?" But yet they supported that.
Absolutely.
And that made all the difference.
Yeah, they really did. My dad wrote the foreword for this book, and so he always, says that he always saw me as a writer. And so even when times, came about that I didn't really think of myself as a writer, or, I was kind of afraid of following that dream, he and my mom were always encouraging me. And I think that, speaking your dreams to other people is just as important as speaking their dreams to them and telling them and encouraging them to do it.
Absolutely. And this is your second book.
Yes.
And I believe it says New York Times best-selling author.
Yes.
Which is not bad.
Thank you.
Which is fabulous, by the way. And now you're at Harvard Divinity School.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, I'm studying for a master's in theological studies and kind of focusing on religion and literature. So I want to write about faith topics and kind of facilitate conversations about faith in some way.
Wow.
Yeah.
And of course, we don't have time to talk about all the fun you had on the campaign trail, but we know that was well, why not? Let's talk about it. Nobody's giving me a time cue. You took some time out between college and going to Harvard to be there on the campaign trail with your dad and your mom, who you talk about very much in the book because you talk about them being like the unit.
Yes.
What was that like, just being out there? You know, your dad says Donald Trump has selected me to be his running mate.
Right.
I mean, were you freaking out, or was this was just, you expected it?
I didn't expect it, but for some reason, I just had a lot of peace about it from the very beginning, even when it was a possibility that we were kind of talking about. And, you kind of find out actually about that very soon after the decision is made, and then you go to the convention. So, I mean, you have like a week and a half or something in between those two things. And so it's kind of crazy. It's a big time of transition, but we just had a lot of peace about it as a family. And, I think that is just a testament to my parents and just, their strength and how they've raised us.
Yeah. Well, we love your dad where he is, and we love this new book. If you'd like to get a copy and find out more life lessons from her father, the Vice President of the United States, please get a copy of Where You Go. You will be so blessed.
And as Wendy said, the book is available wherever books are sold. That is going to do it for this half hour of CBN News Watch. Remember that you can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about always at cbnnews.com. We'd also love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do that by emailing newswatch@cbn.com. You can also reach out and touch us on Facebook, on Twitter, as well as Instagram. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you'll join us again right here next time. This concludes this newscast, but the news continues 24/7 at cbnnews.com and on the CBN News channel. Bye-bye for now.